And now, coming to you live from the City of Angels, Los Angeles, California, it's the Sheena Metal Experience with your host, Sheena Metal, only on KGRA Digital Broadcasting.
Hi, and welcome to the Sheena Metal Experience on KGRA Digital Broadcasting every Friday at 3 o'clock Pacific time. I'm your host, Sheena Metal. I'm a psychic medium. I'm an interfaith minister. I'm a 27-year talk radio host, and I come to you live each week from my home in Los Angeles, California. This show is about spirituality. It's about creativity. It's about humanity. It's about passion. It's about service. It's about being your best you and inspiring others to do the same in this big, beautiful world. And it may be my show every week, my friends, but it's most definitely always your experience. My guest today is a wonderfully talented actress, author, screenwriter, producer. She's a fantastic chef and a lover of dogs and one of my favorite people in the world. Please welcome to the show, the wonderful Christine Elise is here. How are you, my friend? It's good to see your face.
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I am wonderful, and I cannot complain. So it's great to be here and be smiling and see you. And it's been a crazy couple of years, and we seem to all be coming out of it. And I love that story. So I'm good. It's interesting to me because you really see in times of strife, right? Like we've had the last couple of years with the pandemic, how people come out of it. And it sort of reminds me of that adage that you either get bitter or you get better, right? And I think it just depends on your perspective. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a lot of, what I hate these days. But I think you're really seeing the split now in people, right? That some people have just really championed through this tough time, and some people have you really have not. And I think you see the difference in folks that care about the world and folks that just care about themselves. And I know that you care about the world, and that's why I always want to have you interviewed and be with everything I do.
Well, thank you.
So how has this time treated you? What did you do in the downtime? I mean, obviously you did the Chucky series, but that was probably the later half of the downtime, right? So what did you do the first year of the pandemic?
I had my best life. I'm reclusive by nature. I live alone, and I like to be alone a lot. I like my house, and I like my whole situation. So it was, the first 6 months were among the best 6 months of my entire life, except for the fact that half the people were dying all over the world, which was an unpleasant reality. It wasn't my day-to-day reality here in my house, and so it was. I just like, I'm the kind of person that makes plans and then always regrets that I have to follow through with them. And the fact that there was no plans that could be made, nobody could invite you anywhere, was a huge gift to me. I didn't feel the pressure I think people felt initially when it first started to learn Mandarin or, do something really productive with that time. I did a fucking lot of puzzles. I was doing a 1,000-piece puzzle a day for a while there. I had a very expensive puzzle addiction. And I walked around my neighborhood a lot because there's no chance. I know every little house in my entire neighborhood, 2-mile radius of my house. And I had a great time. I miss it.
Yeah. You know what? I hate to say it, but I do too. And I'm very thankful that now my radio shows and this talk show and my spiritual practice, pretty much everything I do is virtual. So I don't have to be a million places. I'm what they call an extroverted introvert. So I'm at my core an introvert, but because of my growing up in the entertainment business, I learned over time to be extroverted. But I'm just like you. Every time I have to go somewhere, in the back of my mind, I'm like, and I kind of make myself go. And once I go, I usually have a good time, but I'm always happy to go home. And I realized about a month after the pandemic that I hadn't spent this much time at home since I was probably 14 years old, because I was always running somewhere, here or there, this thing for high school, this thing for college, and it just never stopped. And I think I felt like I was holding my breath that whole time. So it feels nice to have had the time to decompress, because when you're an empathic person, and I know you are too, I don't know if you'll agree with that, but I agree with that for you. People can be exhausting.
Mhm.
So it's nice to have the break from them. And especially when you're doing something, right, where you're out and you're doing a show and you're on a set and there's so many people, you need to come home and recharge. I feel bad. I of course feel horrible for people who passed, for people who were sick and got long COVID, which I have, for people who lost loved ones. But I also feel sorry for the extroverts, because they had no one to play with and nothing to do and nowhere to be fabulous. And I think there's the ones that really suffered. And introverts, we were like, yay, can it last forever?
Yeah, I'm like you. I also learned. Most people who don't know me well would guess that I'm an extrovert, because I come off as very confident and maybe bold. But that's a learned condition.
Yeah, for me too. Yeah. I just think for introverted people, we like our own company, and some of the world can be a lot. I think it can
Mhm.
be a lot for us. I mean, some of my happiest moments, I came down to the beach when COVID started, because my partner lives down here, and I was planning to sort of start living half and half in the San Fernando Valley where my home was, and half in Huntington Beach where I grew up and inherited my mom's home. I don't know if it's going to be 50-50, because I love being down here by the beach. I love the energy of the ocean. I love that it's a lot slower down here. And I love, like, my best moments. I love just like sitting with my cat. I have a kitten. He just turned 1 last month. And I love just kind of hanging out with him and chilling. And he's very snuggly and likes to cuddle. And it feels good just to just hold him and do nothing.
Mhm.
And, catch up on binge some TV, and just, I mean, I'm busy as can be, but it's all happening in one place, and it's really nice. And I think it's been very healing for me, and I think it's been good for introverts all around, because it's taught people that you don't have to make yourself go out and do those things if you don't want to do them. You can live your life as you want to live your life without pressure, and I think that's a gift the pandemic has given us.
I think the fact that so many people are working from home, and I think that a giant chunk of people will always work from home now, because
Yeah.
offices don't need to spend that money for office space, etc. I think that when you're home that much, that also going out becomes more appealing. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
you don't have that time at work where you're out and you want to get home. You're home all the time, and going out sounds better. Once in a while, like, you can get me out now when you couldn't before, because I go out so seldom.
Yeah, I agree, and I love that too. But I'm still happy to come home. That hasn't changed.
Yeah,
Um, and I think that also when you have animals in your house, that's a very healing thing. That's a very recharging thing. I know you have canine children,
I do.
and that I think that it's interesting to me from a spiritual perspective. It's always been, and from a psychological perspective, how a lot of times human beings sort of drain you. I mean, not the good people in your life, they fill you up, right? But a lot of human beings can be very draining. Um, our animal children kind of fill us up, right? They just constantly put love in and fill that hole.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a magic thing. And I learned that when 5 or 6 years ago, I developed intermittent atrial fibrillation. And I used to go to the Improv and do my birthdays, and 4 times a year I did big shows there. And I would do like a 4-hour red carpet, because I'd take a picture with every single person who was there, and I was so burly. And the first time I went after I had AFib, I was taking pictures with folks for about an hour, and I went right into AFib. And it had never occurred to me how when people want to spend a lot of time with you, I can imagine autograph shows are probably like this too. They're draining a little bit. Most of them don't know they're doing it. They're not doing it to be mean or be horrible. They just need something, and you're filling that hole, right? And because of the way my heart rate was, it couldn't handle it, and it
Right.
was bad. So I have to be careful now around big groups of people, how much I can give before I recharge, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. The autograph shows, yeah, they are exhausting, and not because of any single person, but because of every single person.
Yes.
So I have to treat everybody that comes to my table like the question they're asking is the first time I've been asked it, because it's the first time they've asked it.
Yes.
And so I need to be as on and as sincerely energetic and engaged with every single person, even though I've answered that question probably 50 times already that day. And that just gets to be a lot, is manufacturing that sincerity,
Yes.
which is an oxymoron.
Right. Absolutely. Has anybody ever, have you had, can you remember anybody that asked you something that was just amazing and it was such a nice relief from the same questions that you get?
No. No, I get asked. I mean, I have a Patreon account, and I do sort of a little more sort of personal engagement with the people that are my patrons on that account, and I do a monthly Ask Me Anything, and I also have a podcast too, on the Chucky Show, and I asked my interview subjects, like, what is a question you wish you were asked? What is a question you wish you got a chance to answer? And somebody asked me that. They turned that on me yesterday, and I was like, ugh, I don't know. I guess I'd like to answer questions about books and music more than film and television, because I have interest in those fields as well. No talent, but with books I do, I think. But I just, there's more to talk about than just the thing that I do for work.
Right. Right. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And people don't think about that. They focus on something. And so since I came out of the closet with my psychic gifts 4 or 5 years ago, I don't even know if you know about that, but now you do because you're on the show. So welcome. It amazes me how I'm having a conversation with somebody and they start asking me questions. And I'm thinking, you're not really asking me questions. You're trying to get me to sort of give you a reading. But I think that's the thing, right? I think when people know you do something, sometimes they're thinking about, well, how can this benefit me? And I think people asking you questions about film and television are people wanting answers about shows and movies and stuff they love that you've been in. So they're really kind of looking not to engage you on something, but to get the answer they want about the thing that they love.
True, but I also get asked who's my favorite actress and what director would I like to work with and what role would I like to play, as if I spend all of my downtime just obsessing about work, and it's just not how it goes.
But you and I both know as actors that a lot of actors, that's exactly the questions they want to be asked because it's all they think about.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, it's everything. I see some of my friends on Facebook. And it's like every single post is about this audition or trying to get this job or this thing or this movie, or I saw this movie and all I could think about was that I wished I was in it. I think it's a very, it's a very singular focused way to be. And some folks just are that, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I think I've been at it for so long. I started in 1987 or something. And my expectations of what I will achieve and what sort of opportunities will come my way, my expectations have been severely managed. When I was younger and still had the potential to build a career that is the kind of career people call a career, like Gene Hackman or or De Niro or something. Or there was a day when I thought I strove for that. That was my goal. It was to develop a massive body of work, working with everybody that I admire and have them admire me back. That ship has sailed. So my job now is just to make a living at doing something I like. And as a 57-year-old woman, that's nearly impossible. Especially since TV and film, it's evolved into a different world now where film is just giant, big budget shit, and everybody in it's an A-list person, like everybody.
Yeah.
And then A-list people are also doing the TV.
Yeah.
So there's so little left, and it's awesome that diversity is so in the front of people's minds when they're casting. I think that's a great part of how things have changed, but it does mean less work for me. And it sounds terrible,
Sure.
but
No,
it's true, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not bitter about it, but it's a simple fact.
Yeah. No, but I have a friend who's sort of dark-skinned Jewish, and she said once on my show, I used to be this person of color sidekick in the show,
Right.
but now I'm just considered another white girl. And it's true. I agree with you. It's a beautiful thing, but every time I watch a show and I see that kind of rainbow of color, which I love, I think about that. I think about somewhere there's, folks that worked before.
Somewhere there's some poor white dude who can't get a job.
Exactly. And and they're never supposed to feel sorry for the white dude. But I do always feel sorry for people in the creative arts when work dries up, because I grew up in that world and I know what that's like, right? And it's always sad for me. But you've had a beautiful resurgence the last few years, and that must be amazing.
It's unbelievable. I mean, to have two different projects that I did, one I did in 1989 and one I did in 1991, 2 years apart. The 89 one came back for me in 2019, and the 1991 one came back to me last year. So 30 years later, is that 30? Is that the right math?
Yeah.
I'm getting to revisit a character I played 30 years ago.
Isn't that great?
It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And 90210, The Old and the New, I was really, really proud of that reboot that we did. I thought it was fantastic, and it was so funny. I was so proud of the rest of the cast, and I was bummed that audiences did not embrace it. So I was worried that Chucky, the Chucky reboot, the Chucky series would face the same sort of apathy. Unfortunately, it has not. It's been very, very successful. So I get to work a little bit more. I get to not just work, but work with people that I consider family,
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen often. I'll tell you one of the COVID things that was strange working last summer in Toronto on Chucky. When I got there, I had to do a 14-day quarantine, and Toronto was the strictest city in the country as far as COVID, and you had to do a 14-day quarantine when you got over the border, and then all this COVID protocols and 3 COVID tests a week, and the crew is broken into zones, and you're not allowed to mingle with somebody who's not in your zone. Actors are in zone 1, and everyone's in a burqa. So you're on a set. One of the great charms of being an actor is this informal family that develops on a set.
Yes.
And you make great friendships. Sometimes you take them home forever, and sometimes they're great friendships for the length of the project. But they matter, and they create a community that gives you confidence to do what you're doing and the energy to do it when you're working a 16-hour day. And so I did this show, and I'm looking out at a sea of crew people with black masks. I can't see their face. I wouldn't recognize anybody on the street because I never saw their face. And so I had a scene where I kept fucking the lines up, and you get a little flustered, and I had no one to look to in the room for, a wink, because no one knows me, and I don't know them. And it was really isolating, sort of scary way to have to act.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend who worked on something in 2020. And she said that they literally made you came out for your scene, and then they put you back in your trailer, and they brought you a little box of sanitized food. And that was sort of the craft service.
Yeah.
And that's half the fun of a set, right? It's the craft service, and everybody talking around the craft service, and people laughing. And I think that is something that's been very difficult for people too. I think it's why we've had a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, more than usual. People not being able to shake hands, to hug, to smile at each other. I think that's a lot bigger than we give it credit for. How much we feed off the smiles of others, and how much others feed off our smiles, and how important smiling is.
I completely agree. I have a sort of a routine that I do when I'm feeling down. Is I give anybody I cross paths with or make eye contact with in public, I smile a big smile at them. And it's such a rewarding experience, because typically even the grimmest expression lights up the most when you smile at them.
Yes.
And it's a really self-healing thing to do, because you throw a couple smiles out and then you're getting a ton back, and it's all, you're energized again. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. So I'm going to ask you something that you've probably, I don't know if you've been asked at conventions or not, but having lived in the Chucky world for 30 years, are you a believer in the supernatural? I mean, when you do something like that, do you think, oh yeah, this is something that can happen, or do you think this is total fantasy and I'm having a blast, but I don't believe any of this?
I believe in the supernatural, but not Chucky.
Well, not actually Chucky, but you know.
I do. I had a house in Montecito that was wildly haunted, where you'd be physically affected by whatever was there. It was relatively benign for the most part, but occasionally you'd feel like you couldn't get out of bed. You'd be held down in bed, or weird things happen. Yeah, it was nothing negative ever happened, but it was a big house, and we always had people up for the weekends, and everybody experienced it. Certain bedrooms were worse than others, but yeah, in fact, I did a Ouija board reading in that house, and with a bunch of girls, and it was so intense. What they said the history of the house was, and who these people that were in the house were. Then one person even started crying, and it was really intense reading. And we were separated to go into our various beds, and I walked into the living room to hug one of the girls goodnight. She's like, I'm not going to sleep in there with you. I'm not afraid. I'll sleep out here in the living room. And as I walked in to hug her, the lights all went out. And I said, stop fucking with us. And the lights came back on. Yeah. And she's like, and now I am sleeping in your bedroom with you. Yeah. But I went to the Hall of Records in Santa Barbara to try and verify the stuff this Ouija board came up with. But you need to, you can't go was a person of this name living in this decade? You have to ask, have their actual birthday and death day and stuff. You can't do field searches. You got to have a very specific thing. So yeah. But I was convinced that completely that what had happened was real. That I tried to verify it.
Yeah, I grew up in a haunted house as a kid, and it was very unpleasant, very negative house. Mm-hmm. And I don't it's so funny because I do spirit investigations when people ask me to do so. I cleanse houses when people want me to do so. But I don't want it in my house. I would never do a spirit board in my own house. I have friends that do it on a regular basis, and good on them. But I don't want all that stuff. I want my own space to be mellow and chill, and not have to always be looking over my shoulder for the next weird thing in my own home. Because I deal with so much of it outside. I don't want it in my home. I'm still a little traumatized from that house. When I'm sleeping alone, I still sleep with a light on and the TV on. And even when I'm here with my partner, I have, giant salt lamps that light up really bright, and a glowing moon, because I don't want to sleep in the dark. I just don't like it. And it reminds me of that house. And, I talk about this sometimes when I do conferences or when I teach, that we talk all the time about childhood PTSD from, various kinds of abuse, various kinds of bullying. But there's a lot of people walking around that have childhood PTSD from spiritual things, from encountering things, or from seeing things, or from living in a haunted house. And it's a very real, very scary thing, and very hard to get past, as I'm sure any kind of childhood trauma is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I would never do a Ouija thing in my house. This house is not haunted. And, but I've done things like I've had entity removal done on myself. I've had my father's bloodline cleaned. I've done a lot of work in that various, methodologies. I believe
that's wonderful. I love that. We're learning new things about ourselves today that we didn't know. So what do you completely not believe in? What do you hear people talk about and you think, this is insane and I don't believe this?
I have an answer, and it's going to be super offensive to a lot of people.
Okay.
I think organized religion is collective mental illness. I think believing in a book that was written by a man and thinking it was written by God and that you have the right, that it's just it's so bizarre to me that people fight wars and dislike people because they believe in a different book. It's the weirdest thing to me, and it's true of the vast majority of people on earth. Whether it's, it doesn't matter what faith, Christian or non-Christian, all of it. If it's based on a book, and then you get to pick and choose what parts of the book you think are true and what parts aren't, it's really weird to me. And I can't believe anyone structures their life around something like that.
Well, I think that people are looking for easy answers for their life. They don't want to do the work. So they're looking for something to tell them how to live their life. This is how I kind of think about organized religion. I think that organized religion is like, it's like the rules you have when you live in a neighborhood with an association. It's community based. You believe in what you believe. You want to identify as this. You believe Jesus was savior, or you believe Jesus was prophet, or you believe Allah was prophet, or whatever it is you believe. You believe that the God is a crystal. And then how you gather with other people and the rules that you follow are really like community based. It's like being in the Masons and the rules to be in the Masons. But I think people take it to this level of it comes from spirit. And I absolutely don't believe that it comes from spirit. I think, like you said, human rules made by humans, right?
And I don't appreciate the picking and choosing of which parts you want to enforce and which parts you don't.
Right.
Especially when people want laws made in this country based on their particular favorite book, whichever one it is.
Sure.
But they ignore giant swaths of stuff in it, about violence and selling your daughter to, things that are in the Bible.
Right.
That they would never,
right.
live by.
But they still polyester.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Or wearing two different kinds of fabric on the same day. But meanwhile, you want to legislate who can marry who based on that book you're carrying. Yeah, it's so offensive to me.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you 100%. And it makes me sad because, so my mama was, sort of a closet metaphysician when I was a kid in the 70s, and didn't really come out and start talking about it to anyone in the world until I was in college. She was probably scared she'd get stoned and then I'd have to go up for adoption. But she also was what she called a Teachings of Christ Christian. And she would always say that she loved what Jesus had to say, but she didn't like what people did in his name. And working now, I'm pastored at a progressive Christian church. Those are words I never thought I'd say when I was rebelling against my Orange County upbringing in Hollywood. And so I'm the interfaith pastor, but, many folks there are traditionally Christian because it was a church founded by gay folks for people who got kicked out of churches for not having a lifestyle that the church approved of. So it's extremely progressive, but it's really taught me in the last 3 years that I've been there how much I really like a lot of the things that Christ said. But it all to me boils down to talking about community, talking about connection, talking about love, and how people turned it into this weird, judgy, I don't even understand. Even the book, did they even read the book? I mean, you kind of have to wonder. Sometimes I wonder if they even read their own book.
Well, the book is full of a lot of hate too.
Yeah.
So, and violence. And so,
yeah, you're right.
It really comes down to just do unto others, really, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, no, I get that. I get that you don't believe in that, and I understand. Growing up,
because you would never say like the Freemasons aren't trying to pass American laws based on the Freemason handbook.
No, not at all. No, I agree. I was just using the example that for me, organized religion should be like your community guidelines. It should not be you take it like it's, pun intended, the gospel truth, and try to judge the whole world based on it.
Your interpretation of it, and your interpretation of it, or your interpretation of somebody else's interpretation. So you go to a sermon, you hear a sermon, and then that person's already is in a level of interpretation there, and then you take it another step. Meanwhile, the book was written in a different language a bazillion years ago. Right. So, and words changed their meaning. Gay means a different thing now than it did 75 years ago. Yeah,
absolutely.
So when you have so these mistakes can be made too. Just the translation. You could have people. You get a book like a Kurt Vonnegut book, and have a bunch of different people translate into different languages. It's going to be subtly different book.
Of course. Well, my mama used to say that some monk would think, "Oh, I don't like that," and just scratch it out as he translated it. It went through a lot of different hands, and that's why I think your higher power, your connection to whatever it is you believe in, whatever decide your faith is, that should be something that you just feel in your heart, and you decide what you believe based on what that connection is. Then if you want to go to a church or you want to gather with people, then that's fine. But you can't insist, it's like, just because my pool closes at 10 doesn't mean I want to make it a law that no one's pool can stay open later than 10.
Right.
Keep your guidelines for your own community if that's what you want, and then don't pass them on other people. I think we're learning that, and I think it's a good thing, because I think, as much as I don't like the reactionary buildup that's happened in this country since the 80s, of that kind of ultra Christianity and ultra everything. I do think it's good, because I think it's gotten some people to kind of get up off their barca-loungers and say, you know what, I don't want this, so I'm going to fight for people's rights. And, even people's rights to be that, if that's what they want to be. I have no problem with people belonging to any church they want to belong to. That's their prerogative. They can do whatever they want. But it's I don't want it to bleed over into someone else. And I encountered that, because growing up in Orange County, an hour south of LA in the 80s, it was massive. It was horrible. And it's funny, now I'm down here and it's still very different from LA, but it's much more mellow than it was, just because I think all kinds of different people moved down here and sort of thinned the broth.
Yeah.
But it was, if you didn't, there were Bible study kids that would come and bully you on campus in high school and try to force you to think like they thought. And, my partner went to college down here, and she said that she grew up very Christian, and she belonged to a Christian fraternity, the little sister of a Christian fraternity. And she said the fraternity people would like, oh, let's go over where the gays are and, beat up on them. And it was okay, because it was Orange County. It was the way it was. It's nice to see that has changed. It's nice to see overall it's changed. I know we focus on that at the sputterings of that's still out there. But I believe that, maybe I'm a cockeyed optimist, and you know this about me. I believe that slowly but surely we're working that out, because most people don't want that. That's just a faction of people that have gathered in certain parts of the country, right? And it's hard. Yeah.
To be clear, I don't object to everybody having their club, whatever,
Sure.
That's knock yourselves out, whatever that might be, whether it's a motorcycle club or, a Kabbalah or, whatever you want to do. Sure, that's great. Just don't try to make laws for me based on it.
Yeah. And it's funny, because when I was in college, when my mom kind of came out of the psychic closet and started talking about her gifts, she started going to a lot of taking workshops and joining different New Age organizations. And it was very disheartening for her to find out that it wasn't as bad, but there was the same kind of zealousness there sometimes. It was just a different kind of thing you had to believe in, but you had to believe in this thing if you were wrong. And I guess that's why I sort of have realized that there's just a thing about people that they want to be in the thing that's right, and they want to tell everyone else that's not right. And that's why I'm an interfaith pastor, because I don't want to tell anybody your thing isn't right, just don't let your thing interfere with anybody else's thing, you know? So can I ask you about entity removal? Because I have a lot of clients that have had that done. What made you think that was a thing? And what made you want to do that? And because I'm fascinated.
I became convinced over a decade or more that there was some sort of a hex on me. Nothing was going right, and I would photograph wildly bad. Like I actually said the words, I think there's like a demon in between me and the camera lens. It was my life was just dark, you know, and it didn't make any sense. There was no reason for it that I could point to, and I'd ask everybody, like, what do you see me doing wrong? What do you see as the source of why everything's going wrong? How am I contributing to that? What can I do to fix it? And everyone's like, I don't know. It's the weirdest thing. I see what you're saying. I don't know. And so I reached out to a lot of people. Dee Wallace does readings. I didn't even realize I went to her house and got a reading. Didn't even know that's who I was talking to.
Yeah, she's a good friend of mine. She's been here. I adore her. I love her very much.
Yeah, she's lovely, and I've met her. I know her from shows at cons and stuff now too. But anyway, and then I found a woman from South Africa who lives in like Topanga Canyon or Malibu, and she did the bloodline cleaning thing for me and determined that it was my father's bloodline that was sort of toxic and that it was growing in power. My dad died when I was 45. Everybody on my dad's side of the family dies. No, he died when he was 45. Everyone on my dad's side of the family tends to die right at about 45. And so that when I had outlived 45, somehow that whole family line was not happy about it. So I did a bunch of readings with her. It was a South African, an African actually, sort of a tarot, but it's a big bowl of metal and fur and shells and bits, and they do a casting, and then she reads the, you know, how it falls. And then I worked with the Saska twins, who are these Canadian grindhouse horror movie directors. Sylvia and Jen Saska, who are the loveliest women on earth, on a show called Elevator, a game show they were doing. And they sent me to the entity removal. She's in South Pasadena. Forget her name. I was doing everything. I was doing everything and anything I could do to get this whatever hex off of me. And the entity removal was interesting. So you lay on a bed in the middle of a room, and there's like incense things, like those beautiful, like the Catholic ones they swing. Those that kind of thing hanging all around. And she asked me what I thought, why I was there. And had I ever seen anybody, or thought I saw something? Do you ever think you saw something, a spirit, a person that wasn't there? And I was like, no. I told my mother, she's like, yeah, there was, when you lived on Normandy in Hollywood, you kept seeing somebody go in the closet, and you'd go and look in the closet and no one was there. And she said, it's not a powerful entity, but there is one. And she said, so she did her little ritual and saying things and stuff. And she said, at some point I want to show you where the bathroom is, because you might feel very sick at some point during this. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to fucking feel sick. And I did. What was going on? I was like, oh my God, I think I might actually throw up. So I did all of those things. So and over time, so I can't credit any one or combination of them with things being fixed, but things are fixed in a huge way. Yeah. I also have a apartment in my house that I rent out, and I had somebody in it for 11 years that I fucking hated. I hated him, and he hated me, and he hated my dogs, and it was a really poisonous. He was a hoarder. It was a very poisonous thing, and he left in December of 2020, so right before COVID. He moved out, and the house just became like it could breathe. My whole entire building improved when he left it. So all of that.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting how that I dated somebody for, well, almost 12 years, and I literally could not make any money when I was with that person. I could create opportunities for myself, but I could not get paid for anything. And it got, I drained my savings, and people like that never work. So you're supporting them. And then I ran up credit cards, and then they were all ran up, and I couldn't get any more credit, and I had to borrow money from my mom. It was just insane. And I finally put on my big girl pants, and I ended that relationship. And as the U-Haul full of the stuff with the person drove away, I got a call and I got 2 paid jobs that day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, because sometimes a person who's toxic, they can kind of cloud up your chi, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can literally stop you from whatever it is. They can end all your friendships, or
Yep.
stop you from making money, stop prosperity, stop anything. And when you have somebody in your house, as I did with this person, as you did with your person, even though you weren't involved, that energy floats around, and it affects you. It affects your dogs. I mean, it affects everything.
Oh, he would clear his throat every 15 seconds. And I swear to God, he slept 1 hour a day. And I could hear that throat clearing like through the floor. And it was such a poisonous thing that I was always like this. I hate you. And he left, and I heard the throat clearing for like
now I'm doing
2 months after he was gone. I kept hearing, fucking throat clearer. Oh, he's not even there anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't hear it
some
anymore.
people's energy stays after they're gone. Did you sage the apartment?
Oh my God, yeah. He was a hoarder. So and there was there were rats living in the couch. Like I had to do a lot. It took me over a month to get the apartment back to what it should look like.
Wow.
It was very bad, very, very bad.
Wow.
But, I had some house improvement. I had a flood in my house, and insurance had to replace my floors. That I could only do that and rebuild the deck and stuff. Had him not living there, because he was living in the outside portion of his area as well, and forbidding me to ever enter it. And like I couldn't have done the improvements on the house that had to have been done if he had been there. Everything in my lifetime is perfect. Like things not, but like things time perfectly now. Like everything's just flowing and bright, and I'm so relieved.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how you can just have a little spiritual glitch, and it can change everything in your life? And that glitch can be because of something non-living, something living. It's interesting. I've been talking about this a lot lately. This may wind up being my first book, but the way that we deal with human beings who have negativity and darkness in them, or narcissists, or whatever you want to call them, is very much the same as dealing with a negative, disembodied energy that lives in your house or lives inside of you. Negativity is negativity, whether it's biologically living or not. And I think that people just allow themselves. I mean, when something like that happens, you don't know what to do, right? You don't know, I got to clean this entity out, or I got to get this guy out of this apartment. It all kind of takes us by surprise. And I think it's why it's so nice that this is something we talk about now, because a lot of people have dealt with this in their life and don't know what to do. That's why I'm very open about everything in my life. And I talk about growing up in that house, and I talk about having the crazy narcissist partner, because there are other people right now who are stuck in a situation like that, and they need to hear it's okay to say this isn't okay and change their life.
I agree. I dated a narcissist for 4 years. Was also very overlapping with that guy living downstairs too. It was a lot of negativity, and my dogs kept dying out of nowhere.
Right.
I had a dog die at 11 months old. 3 years later, her brother died in his sleep for no reason. 5 years later, another one came. I came home to a dead dog 3 times in 7 years. It was really, really dangerously dark here.
Yeah. I agree.
And the Soska twins, you should follow them on Instagram. They post,
I will.
They must have intimate experience with narcissism too, because they post a lot of things about how to recognize it and how to get away from it.
Right.
They're such positive women, and we were doing a show called Elevator downtown in it was an old slaughterhouse. Hadn't been one for a long time, but we shot the show there, and the building was really haunted, and they brought an exorcist in to exorcise the building in the middle of our shooting, and we didn't complete that. We got thrown off the property. We had a hard out on the location, so that the exorcism wasn't completed before we were off the property, and the next day everything went wrong. People got injured, lights kept falling over and breaking, and
wow.
And they were gonna do a documentary exercising the Cecil Hotel. You're aware of the Cecil Hotel downtown. It's called the Cecil Hotel. Is a really, really haunted hotel.
Yeah.
Richard Ramirez lived there. That woman, Elisa Lam from Vancouver, she was found dead in the water towers.
In the water tank on the roof. Mm-hmm.
And that's unbelievably spooky footage of her in the elevator by herself, acting weird. Apparently is really, really powerful. Sedona is built on a sort of place in the earth where some positive energy comes out from that, like sort of a font of positivity in Sedona. Apparently that building is built on the opposite of that.
Yes.
It's built on some sort of negative vortex. And they were going to do an exorcism on that building. But they're like, it's so dangerous that no men should ever go in it. Apparently it's really toxic for men. Many people have committed suicide jumping out the windows of it. It's got a really dark history, and they were going to have like a whole spiritual bath across the street. So anybody who's on the set of this thing or they'd have to go across the street and get themselves cleaned before they would go home. So they don't bring any of this stuff home with them. But they're fascinating women, and they're super, super positive and very like pro women, and I'm a huge fan, and really pro animals too. So I'm a big fan of the two of them.
It's wonderful. Yeah, there was a show on Animal Planet for a while called The Haunted, and it was basically, first account ghost stories that involved animals. And in many of those episodes, the animals died, and they just couldn't handle. Because I think animals are such a pure. Their spirituality is much purer than ours, right? They don't doubt everything. They just take their cues from universe and they just live their lives. And dogs, especially, I think, because dogs are so emotional that when stuff gets very negative and very toxic and very terrible, I think they just take it all in because they're so empathic until it literally affects their physiological system, and then they wound up getting sick.
Well, it's weird that some of the things have happened here, but I also talked to a dog psychic when my dogs die. I talked to a dog psychic too. So, and one told me that the last one, the pug, his name is Memphis, that he actually looked into the eyes of an entity, and he died instantly.
Oh, yeah, it's rough. I didn't know you had gone through all that. I wish I had known that was going on. It's a hard thing to go through, and so I'll tell you a strange story about my narcissistic ex. When the breakup happened, there were some stuff that was mine wound up leaving, and it was sent back to me in a box, and it was literally like a phone, a sock, a thing of socks, a phone, and something else. Anyway, when I opened this box, the most incredibly noxious smell came out of this box. I mean, it was like opening a grave.
Wow.
And I kind of believe that smell was sort of always around, but you don't notice it when they're around because you're sort of glamored by them. But I do think that extremely negative people, like negative entities, sometimes kind of a nasty smell comes with them. It's really interesting how the spirit world and the earthly world come together, and how, because you would think of a smell as something that's very earth plane. You wouldn't think a spirit could have a smell. But they always say, right, when there's negative energy or a negative entity, there's this horrible smell. And I always think about the smell that came out of that box.
It's funny because I've got a friend whose boyfriend has been missing now for 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But his father's a really dangerous person. Mm-hmm. And so she's missing. Her parents don't seem concerned. She filed a police report, missing persons report. And their parents are hustling her out of the house. And she's like, every time I'm around that dad, I smell sulfur. It's
bad.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. This world is hard. And I'm glad you're doing better. I know it's hard when you're a person who feels a lot. You sort of become chum for the narcissist, right? You kind of have to keep your eyes open all the time.
Bravo for the use of chum, by the way. Chum is not used in casual conversation nearly enough.
Yay for chum.
Yep.
But it's true, right? I mean, they will find you. My mama used to say they'll find you like the wise men found Jesus. And it's true. You've got a beacon that says, I'm an empath, I'm a nice person. And then they come and find you. I never want to be cryptic about it. Like, beware, they're everywhere. But, I always kind of use the analogy when I teach growing up in Surf City that, you're in the ocean all the time, but the sharks are also there. And for whatever reason, they belong there, you belong there, and you kind of have to hope you don't run into them, don't do anything to draw their attention, and if you see one, just get the hell away. And I think it's pretty much the same with narcissists, and and even if you have to work with them or be in a family with them, you don't have to engage them. And I think that's it's a hard lesson to learn, but it's I'm so glad that you've gotten your stuff cleared out and you're doing so great. I'm so happy for you. And I've known you for a long time through a lot of the different stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm so happy for where you are now and thrilled that you are working on a show with people you love, which is the most important thing, right? I mean, making art with people you love is like the best in the world.
Yeah, it is. I'm lucky.
Where can people find you for everything, right? You still have your cooking show. You've got a podcast.
Yeah, the cooking show I have sort of not been taking care of, but there's 150. It's called Delightful, Delicious to Lovely. It's on YouTube. You can get to the channel by videovegan.com. Takes you right to the YouTube channel. And there's 150 episodes up, so there's plenty of content there without me even generating more. Currently, I'm doing a podcast called Chucky Talks with Alex Vincent, which every episode we do two things. We interview somebody from the cast or the crew, and then the next week we break down an episode, minute by minute. That's at chuckytalks.com. Other than that, if you go to I wrote a book. I wrote a book called Bathing in the Single Girl. So if you go to bathing book, take a bath, bathingbook.com. There's a short film there that works as a trailer for the book, and the book it's on Amazon, and there's a contact page there that has my Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all that. I'm pretty much an Instagram only girl, and my feed from Instagram sort of auto loads onto Facebook and Twitter. So I'm really Instagram centered. A lot less conversation happening on Instagram, so it's a relief.
Yeah.
Facebook is too combative.
More pictures, less words.
Yeah. Like Facebook is way too combative and it makes me hate everybody. So
yeah, I get it. And Twitter is the absolute worst.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for coming here. Let's do this again. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
And I'm excited to see you soon.
Yes, indeed.
Even if it's virtually.
All right.
Thank you, my friend. The wonderful Christine Elise, everybody. Such a joy to have my friend here and to talk about everything and all kinds of cool spiritual stuff I didn't even know we were going to talk about. I'm so thrilled. I'm at sheenametalspiritual.com. Yes, I have finished the website. For the first time in my life, I can say my website is finished, and I'm very, very excited. Also, social media, I'm everywhere, just at Sheena Metal. And until you see you next Friday at 3:00 Pacific time, seek peace, live in love, lead with kindness, embrace unity, always raise your vibration. And I love you a lot. I'll see you next time. Thank you to KGRA Digital Broadcasting, to my wonderful guest, Christine Elise, to all of you who are watching, and we'll see you next time on the Sheena Metal Experience. Thank you.
Thanks.